We're often told by our clients that they love their house. Well, they love their neighborhood and they love the people around them, but they don't really love their house. So how do we make way for a new house? How do we take that old house and remove it so that we can build a new house without taking that old house and putting it in the trash, or more specifically, the landfill? Well, today we're talking deconstruction, and specifically the deconstruction of the old house to make way for the Syriza Passive House. Let's take it away. So what does it mean to be a good house? Is it a good house because it's built good, or is it a good house because it actually fits the needs of the client? Well, I think it's both. And this project, whether it is a good house or not, doesn't fit the needs of the current client. And so what we're going to do is we're going to deconstruct this project. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that when we take this house apart, we're reusing as much of it as possible so that we don't have a bunch of it going to the landfill. So we're going to start with this drawing, this house right here. And you can see it has a roof and windows. And just from looking at it, we can see that the windows are single pane windows, wood, original. It's probably a 100-year-old house, and just not very good materials. And a lot of the materials are not going to be reusable for current housing by the code. And so what we're going to do is first we're going to start in the roof, because that's where all the weight is. And we're going to take that roofing material off. Now those shingles get dumped right into a truck, just like this, as if we are re-roofing the house. We also had plywood on this roof, so we're going to be taking that plywood off, pulling it off of the existing roof, underlying what's called the skip sheathing, or this kind of boards that are put along the roof line and that hold up the original shingles, which are probably wood. And so we're going to take that material, and that plywood comes off in full sheets. Now somebody's going to have to go later on and use a denailer or a nail gun that operates in reverse and pushes the nails out of the wood. But this wood, if you can look at it, it looks almost like the wood that you can buy at Home Depot or a place like that. So then we're going to take it and we're going to pull all the trim off that house, and all that trim goes here. Now often that trim is painted with lead-based paint, so it can actually be reused. That trim will have to go into a landfill because you can't put in new lead-contaminated material in a new house. So that material is going to go away and probably get dumped into a landfill. It can't even be reused as mulch by grinding it up, because the paint makes it a toxic material. So then we're going to go and we're going to look at the existing house. Now, if we go inside the house, we've seen that it's already had all the sheetrock and the plaster pulled off of the walls. In fact, we see a little bit of plaster over here, but that's going to be pulled down, and that allows all the insulation that used to be in the attic to come down and litter the floor. So then we're going to clean that up, and we're going to see all the insulation. Now, this insulation is not your normal fiberglass insulation. It's actually a old material, typically of wood fibers and fiberglass fibers. And you can see that when you look at it, it's fairly small and kind of looks like fluffy powdered sugar. And that material is actually not really reusable. Often the roofing material and the insulation that we pull out of these old houses is filled with rat feces and urine, and that's going to be a toxic material. So we're going to take that and we're going to put that into the landfill and not reuse that. But then look at this. Now, I often actually think this is a beautiful picture because it shows this play of light and the structure of the house, but literally we have this entire house that's just filled with this wood. And now this wood, as we showed in our previous video, is often very, very good wood. It comes from old growth lumber. It's very, very straight, very durable. It's dried for the better part of 100 years. So it's super strong and super good to use. But we're not going to be using it in our future houses because it doesn't tend to take nails very well. So if you take a nail gun, which is typically how we're building houses, and when you shoot it into these boards, you can fracture or break it. So this wood is often best used for people who are doing a lot of this work by hand, and that's just not the modern construction industry. It costs too much. But a person that doesn't have the ability to go to Home Depot or a material supply and buy a bunch of lumber can reuse this material, and it's a very, very cost-effective solution to get really good material. So then we're going to look at it, and you see that these are full dimension lumber. Very, very straight. Again, totally reusable, but not in the modern way that we're going to build houses quickly and as effectively as possible. So now we've gotten this material. We've got a truck that takes all that material directly off the roof or out of the house and goes away. And now we're gonna start collecting all the other materials. So we've pulled down the walls in this picture, and we've actually pulled up the floors, and you'll see all the lumber around us. Now this lumber, unlike the trim that we talked about before, doesn't have paint on it. So it's actually fairly clean lumber. It's actually called clean lumber, and that can be reused. Now small pieces like we see down here are not gonna be good for salvage materials because they've got a lot of nail holes in them, but this can easily be mulched and used for ground cover, for bedding, for plants and gardens. And so that's going to be a very reusable material. If it doesn't have the quality that we need for land cover or mulch, then it can be used to burn in what are called Cogen facilities, so places that burn materials to make energy. And you'll see that a lot of this lumber comes off. So again, the ones with the paint don't get reused. Stains, again, don't get reused, but everything else can be reused either as its original material or for cogen or mulch. The nails become not really important because they get removed either before they get reused or they get ground up and then pulled out by giant magnets if the wood is shredded. So what you see here now is the existing it looks kind of messy, but it's actually a fairly clean job site. We have material here like tar paper, which can't be reused. Then we have a bunch of lumber from the studs and from the roof that are reused and stacked according to size. We have a bunch of other stuff that still needs to be cleaned. Maybe the lumber is too small to reuse, so then that ends up going to a cogen facility. We have a bunch of lumber here that has its nails that still need to be withdrawn. And then we have a bunch of lumber over here that's probably that skip sheathing, and so it can also go to alternate. But look at the floor over here. The floor is absolutely beautiful lumber, and so that can be reused. The bricks in the fireplace, so this is the old fireplace right here, they can be pulled down and then reused. They're actually highly prized. Old brick is actually much more valuable than new brick because it has a lot of its old character to it and some paints or old mortar and stuff. So that's actually about 3 times the cost of new brick. So then we also look at what is called galvanized sheet metal. So this sheet metal used to be used for the ducting. This can be melted down and reused again to make new materials. Metal, while it's got a high embodied carbon, is actually highly reusable because you can melt it down and reuse it and form it into new materials over and over and over again. And lastly, we really have this kind of tight job site. Everything's in its place where there's no extra debris except for this pile right here of really papers and tar papers that can't be reused. So really, we're going to be taking all of that material and we're going to be reusing it over and over again. Now, I actually don't have any good pictures of the foundation, but the concrete of the foundation is actually one of the most prized materials because you can take that concrete, it comes out fairly easily out of the ground. You have to break it up if it has rebar and cut the rebar, but then that material goes to a landfill and it gets ground down and made into essentially aggregate, which is rocks or ground up concrete, and it can be reused for things like road base, which is the portion of the road that goes to flatten out the ground before they put the asphalt or the new concrete on it, or it can even be reused to put into new concrete. So concrete mixed with cement, which is the kind of binding agent for concrete, and then aggregate and sand together with some water makes new concrete. So you see, and we'll show in subsequent videos, that all of this material gets reused. How much material? Well, you have to watch our next video to find out. If you're interested in looking more at our projects or following us, please hit subscribe as we show you how to build a better way.